Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the French presidential election results from the point of view of what it represents for the battle against rising authoritarianism in Western societies, because the result yesterday was not a victory, it was a reprieve. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there have been parallels between the French presidential second round vote yesterday and the Brexit referendum in 2016. President Macron was himself one of those drawing those parallels. Back in 2016, how many people who would have voted Remain, if they'd have had to vote one way or the other, would have voted Remain, but stayed at home because they thought, well, Remain's going to win. That's what I'm seeing in the news. What did they feel like the next day when that didn't happen at all? The Remain campaign was fronted by people who weren't particularly popular. Indeed, polling suggested some voted Leave just to piss off David Cameron. How similar might it have been in France? Yes, a clear majority would not want Le Pen to be president. But many didn't approve of Macron either. You could imagine the thinking. You don't want to vote for Macron, but you will if it stops Le Pen. You'll hold your nose, you'll vote for Macron because he may not represent your domestic politics, but he is pro-European, pro-alliance. Le Pen represents division and hatred. But you hear the news that polling suggests Macron's going to win anyway. Oh, he's doing better in the polls. Oh, his poll lead's actually widening. Might you not prefer to stay at home? Be secretly pleased that Macron wins, but not to have personally had to hold your nose to be responsible for his re-election either. Thankfully, enough people decided yesterday to make sure. I don't know if many French voters in that position actively thought about the mistakes that we made in the UK to motivate them. For whatever reason, they went out and voted for a president that they didn't feel represents them as the pragmatic choice to prevent a president who would deliberately work against their interests. So attention now turns to the parliamentary elections. Not for me, of course, because amongst the jubilation at the result, I want to do a bit of doom mongering, because this wasn't a good result. Let's consider a few angles. So first of all, the actual result. Macron got just over 58% to Le Pen's just over 41%. Comfortable margin. Of course, the same people in this country who said that the 52% Brexit win was a massive majority are also saying that Macron's 58.5%, it's only quite a tight victory. That's not really a big victory, is it? But never mind that. Le Pen still got 41%, 41 and a bit percent. Yes, there were a load of eligible voters who didn't vote for either. Yes, you could argue that those who would prefer Le Pen would go out and vote for her. So you can infer that the vast majority of those who either didn't vote at all or they did vote but spoiled their ballot were those who prefer Macron to Le Pen but don't like either. But they really don't like Le Pen. But 41% of those who turned up to vote voted for Le Pen. That's a lot of people voting for division and hatred. Voting for disunity in Europe at a time when unity really has never been so obviously vital to their interests. And it was an increase on before. You know you're in trouble when we need to go for political wisdom to the Mail on Sunday. But despite their appalling article on Angela Rayner yesterday, which I was supposed to be talking about at this time, but I think that's coming out later because YouTube reasons, there seems to be some found there because one of their hacks, Dan Hodges, pointed out, quite rightly, that Le Pen Senior got 18% in 2002. Marine Le Pen got 34% in 2017. Now she's got just over 41%. And France doesn't live in isolation. Look around. Trump may no longer be president in the USA, but his politics was not defeated. He could easily come back again in the next election. If anything, he's solidifying that politics. And even if Trump doesn't come back at the next election, look at the Republican Party. It's almost completely consumed now by Trumpism. And look at what they're doing. In order to be consumed by it, they're having to go with the line that the election was stolen. That is now the mainstream view in the Republican Party. They're just waiting to come back to power. They may have a long time. They may not. But they're waiting, and unless something remarkable happens, they're going to get their chance again. Hungary, to a lesser extent Poland, also tilting towards authoritarianism. The UK is obviously on a very slippery slope away from democracy. Even if Putin is defeated in Eastern Europe and falls or dies, whatever, it's hard not to see problems arising with Russia again in the future, because unless the West and Russia works really hard to come to an arrangement where they can coexist in harmony, there will never not be a time where Russia feels humiliated by treatment, whether real treatment or perceived treatment from the West, and wants to reassert its dominance. You've got this it's like the Cold War never went away, this ideological difference between Russia and the West. You know, until people get to a point where they say, look, let's work this out together, let's come to some arrangement where we can both feel that we're both, you know, powerful without feeling in the other's shadow, that's going to keep happening. Imagine what would have happened if Le Pen won that presidential election yesterday. Imagine the damage she could cause to the EU. It would be the Daily Express's wet dream come true, of course. But all the poor behaviour of my own government towards our European neighbours, we never did what Le Pen threatened to do. Like, if you consider, when we voted to leave the EU, it was coming up to the UK's time to take over the rolling EU presidency. David Cameron said, no, we're leaving, so we shouldn't take our turn and pass over to the next in line. Now, that was a politically stupid decision, but at least it was a noble one. Throughout the Brexit fiasco, despite the childish antics from some British politicians, never once did our government interfere in EU business. We actually behaved as if we'd already left. We didn't block anything. We paid our way. Marine Le Pen threatened to withhold funds from the EU, to bring the whole thing down from the inside. We're not going to leave the EU, she said. We're going to actually destroy it from inside. Yesterday's result wasn't a victory, it was a reprieve. Because there was an attack. There was an attack on Europe, on European unity, on peace. The attack was repelled, but it was still an attack. There's not a victory when you repel an attack. You know, nobody gained anything. Those of us who want harmony, we just didn't lose, that's all. But the forces coordinating to rule have not been stopped. The same forces who've made major gains in Russia, the United States, the United Kingdom, Hungary, Poland, and came too close for comfort in France, they've not called it a day. It's a setback for them. They've had loads of setbacks, but they'll keep pushing forwards. You know, they still showed an improving vote share. And it needn't have been Le Pen. In fact, it shouldn't have been. If the no-hoper left-wing candidates had stood down in the first round, then it seems likely that Mélenchon would have beaten Le Pen to second place. That would have been way better. But he's a pissing Lexiteer, isn't he? Like, whichever way you look, Macron was the only pro-European in the running. Next time, France may get an anti-EU president. Entirely plausible, whether from left or right. The European project was fundamentally about peace. That is its foundation and also its greatest achievement. It fulfilled that aim through binding interdependence on trade, and it worked. Like I've often argued, it works less well in Britain because we don't have people, I think, who remember soldiers on our streets curtailing our freedoms. People go about Northern Ireland. I said Britain, not the UK. Most countries in Europe have this living memory. It's there, so you appreciate it. You don't want to go back to those days. But the more time passes, the fewer people are around who remember it, because it's worked so well for so long. Now it's a distant memory, and it's becoming a distant national memory. So then you come to know peace for so long, you take it for granted. That's what's happening now in Europe. People feel too safe. They look at the EU and they don't see it bringing peace and prosperity, because it's done it so well for so long that people don't see the connection. They just see it part of life. There's peace in Europe. Most of it. You know, we did it here in the UK. People voting Brexit didn't believe that there would be consequences. We were a wealthy nation. Why wouldn't that remain? It didn't seem credible to millions of people that suddenly our economy would tumble like it did. The predictions were called Project Fear, and people fell for it. They dismissed the fears because they thought, well, yeah, I mean, it'll just be like normal, won't it? What? People just saw the EU as imposing these rules they'd rather not follow, completely forgetting that there's no such thing as the EU as they think about it. The EU as they call it, it's not this cartoon headmaster laying down the law. It's a series of committees, basically, made up of the people elected to decide rules of common interest by the people of the countries inside the EU. But when people take something for granted, they risk losing it. And once you've lost something, not an easy thing to get back. When the UK finally left the EU, I remember talking about my fear for the rest of Europe. What happened with Brexit wasn't some quirk of the UK. We were particularly vulnerable, yes. Our mainstream media was bought up some time ago to act to promote corporate interests. Our first past the post system allows for an extreme government. Consider that Le Pen won just over 41% of the vote and lost. In 2019, the Conservatives won 43.6% of the vote, not much more than Le Pen, and won 100% of the power. Of course, anti-EU forces could still take the French Parliament, yeah? But although the UK was the most vulnerable, it doesn't mean other countries are not vulnerable. You know, as they say, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. I worry that people are too pleased about this result, that it's seen as a victory when it should be a warning. This result, you know, that it was even in doubt, should be a massive warning bell. Authoritarianism is on the rise in the West, because it's not just about France. You could look around. It's like a terrorist. It can be stopped any number of times, and it'll keep trying, because it only has to succeed once, and we're knackered. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button, and until next time, I'll see you later.